Welcome to Playing Above the Line, where we interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and community activists to get their thoughts and perspectives on leadership. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Aviso Group, a business consulting and accounting firm focused on preparing clients for the future through innovation and positive growth. Welcome to Playing Above the Line. I'm Alan, your host, and I'm flying solo today. Carrie, our producer, is out, and so this is probably the first time in a long time, even if ever, that I've tried to do this on my own. So if it sounds a little bit different, hey, that's my fault because Carrie's not here to keep me straight, but we'll do the best we can with what we got. So our guest today is Nick Nichols, and he is the founder and president of LXIS Management Solutions. And so, Nick, we appreciate you joining us today.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Well, you and I both kind of talked off mic. It's been a Monday on a Tuesday. Is today Tuesday?
Today's Tuesday. Feels like a Monday, but today's Tuesday.
Good gosh. So anyway, Carrie's not here, and then we had some difficulties getting set up and situated, but we finally did, and so we're gonna have a great conversation. So I appreciate you coming and joining us today. I know you've got a lot to say about leadership because LXIS, LXIS is how that is spelled, I guess, but that stands for Leadership Excellence in Sales, right? So I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say, but tell us a little bit about LXIS Management Solutions. How did it come about? What was the genesis of it? And just a little bit about what you do.
I started LXIS mainly because my kids and my wife told me I was wasting a skill set. I was kind of working semi-retired, doing some angel investing and some other things, and I was helping people with resumes and get ready for interviews and people that were going into their first line management job, helping them prepare whatever. And I kind of said, this would be fun. And Mobile, we just moved to Mobile, so Mobile seemed to be a fairly closed environment, and thought it would be just fun to do leadership primarily focused on sales, but working with small business leaders that are trying to run sales, and they're entrepreneurs and they're wearing 4 different hats, right. And they can't afford me full time, but they need the sales help. I've just kind of worked my way through the hatch more than anything else. So.
Okay, so so Rick Miller at the hatch then.
Yeah.
Right, okay. And I should say, typically my listeners are used to me saying that we're recording in the hatch or at hatch, and today we're not. We are actually in the conference room at Aviso Group, and so that's why you didn't hear me say that today, because we're not at hatch. But Rick Miller has been a great friend of the podcast and has really stepped up and allowed us to come and record at his space until we have a studio over at Coastal that's going to be ready for us. But so that's great. Rick's a good guy. So do you find that, just speaking of entrepreneurs / sales folks, is that something that is mutually exclusive? I mean, are entrepreneurs just not typically the greatest sales people? What do you find there?
Well, I like to do leadership training and leadership consulting, but I'm an old sales guy, so most of the time it really comes back to sales.
Yeah.
And when you look at some of the entrepreneurs may be great sales guys. Mm-hmm. Some of them may be accountants. Some of them may, have a financial background. Some of them may be engineers, but they're trying to wear all the hats.
Yeah.
And what I find with a lot of the entrepreneurs is that sales is just, hey, look, we just got stuff. We got to go sell this product. This is what we got to do. And they don't really understand the total impact that sales makes on their business. Mm-hmm. Sales drives everything because it drives revenue. Okay. I work with a lot of accountants, and accountants can come in and do business improvement and those type things, but everything they do in some shape, form, or fashion is a percentage of the top line. Mm-hmm. If you really want to help an entrepreneur grow his business, you got to help him grow his top line, and that's what sales does. Yeah. And, there's no such thing as a born salesman, okay? We learn our trades just like an accountant learns it, an engineer learns it, whatever. Most of the time, you got the battle scars to prove it because, we don't do a great job of training sales managers in our industry. So I try to work with entrepreneurs to help them understand what their sales process really looks like. It's not just about selling stuff. It's how you manage how you sell stuff. Mm-hmm. And then if you can get a handle on that, I may help them find the right guy. I might be the right guy for 3 or 4 months to help them. But whatever it is, the challenge is fun. If I want to help a business, the biggest impact I can make is help them with their sales process.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, so let's talk about leadership then. And you were intriguing to me because leadership is in the name of your company, or at least in the acronym. And I knew that you were going to have some good stuff to say. So when I say leadership, what comes to mind? Do you have a firm definition? Is it fluid? What do you think when I say leader?
I think it's fluid, but the parts are kind of the same all the time. Leadership to me is the ability to empower people to do what needs to be done and motivate them enough to be accountable for getting it done and then celebrating success.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wants to work for a leader that just says, hey, I need you to go do this, go get it done. And, they either take all the credit or they just don't recognize the fact, hey, you did a great job.
Yeah, yeah. You used a word that I think sometimes we miss, accountability. I mean, that's a key component, in my view anyway, of being a good, effective leader. If the accountability is not there, then a lot of times you're just wasting everybody's time, right?
Well, I think accountability is probably one of the most important functions. It was funny when I was with GE, and GE's pretty structured.
Yeah,
but I took over a commercial ops group that was really struggling, and I had this little mantra, and it was attitude and accountability. And I had a little A with a score 2 on it, and it went on every one of my PowerPoints, every one of my any kind of correspondence that I did, because those two functions, if you have the right attitude and you're accountable for what you're going to do, you can figure out the rest. And then GE made me pull it off all my stuff because it didn't fit their stuff.
Of course.
But anyway, it worked to motivate my team.
Yeah. Well, and accountability is a two-way street, right? You've got to hold people accountable, but you also have to be accountable to...
Well, you have to be accountable to them.
Right.
Because they have to know the importance of their work, why you need them to do it. You have to empower them to give them the training and the tools and the support to do it. And then by the same token, if something goes wrong, you've got to have the air cover for their backs.
Yeah.
So it is a two-way street.
So accountability, obviously a big one. Give me you listed a few others. Give me a couple of other ones that you think are important as far as qualities of
as far as leadership goes.
Leadership. Uh-huh.
The first one and most important one is desire. If you don't want to be a leader, you're not ever going to be a good leader. I'm going to talk about sales, but this happens in any industry. People like to take their top performers and go, poof, you're a manager. We need a manager. Yeah. And there's a lot of people out there that don't want to be a manager, so they're never going to be good at it. So desire is the most important role. Accountability, we've already discussed. Mm-hmm. I think you need to be a good communicator, so people understand what you're asking them to do, and they understand what their role in success is. The old worthwhile work, from books in the 70s. Well, you're too young for that. From books in the 80s. Yeah. But people want to know that what they do is important. After that, it's probably a good foundation. Integrity, honesty. You don't play games with people. People want to trust you if they're going to follow you. And the last thing from me on leadership is the ability to make decisions, especially the hard ones. Mm-hmm. The hard ones aren't fun, and they don't get any easier by delaying them. And by delaying them, you show that you may be somewhat weak. And one of two things happens. One of your top performers just runs right by you because something has to be done. Mm-hmm. Or the people above you will basically say, well, if he can't make the decision, this is a leadership issue, not whatever the decision problem was. Yeah. So I think just the ability to make decisions, and there are people who just don't like handling any kind of obstacle or any kind of conflict. I mean, sometimes you need conflict just to get past whatever it is. So
yeah, right. Yeah, and too, along those same lines, I mean, there's, I've called it analysis paralysis. I mean, some people just can't make a decision because they're looking at every angle so many times and from every different kind of perspective that you can imagine that they just will never pull the trigger.
You just defined Six Sigma.
Yeah.
I got my green belt when I was with GE, and I think it's because it was out of pity. I had a black belt that reported to me, and she just says, Nick, you're always going to the solution. You have to evaluate everything first. And I just asked her, if you're going to drive from Maine to California, would you find it on the map first? I think she just gave me my green belt just to get rid of me. So,
got it. Well, so I mean, you've got some great thoughts on leadership and very passionate thoughts, I can tell. How has your view of leaders and leadership changed over the years, and what kind of shaped your perspective? Was there anybody that you've been associated with or exposed to that has kind of shaped your view, or is it just your experiences, or a combination?
There's a lot of people that have shaped my view, both good and bad, and you learn from both circumstances. When you're a young manager, whether you're a sales manager or project manager or whatever, it's about performance. It's about you. It's about, God, I got to do this. I got to look good. I got to make this happen, whatever. As you progress as a leader, and I think this was a quote out of Jack Welch's book, but it said, before you're a leader, growth is about your success. Mm-hmm. Once you become a leader, success is about growing your people. I'm sure I paraphrased that, but the concept is right. The main focus goes from you to your team. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're just a self-absorbed manager. Yeah. You're not really a leader.
Yeah. So along the lines of people that you admire and that have shaped your views and that kind of thing, we asked you to just give us a leader that you admired, and you mentioned 2 or 3: Martin Luther King Jr., Ronald Reagan, Jack Welch.
I need to qualify that. When I read that question, all of a sudden 30 years of leadership sounded like it was lacking. Because you admire Martin Luther King and Ronald Reagan and Jack Welch and maybe some authors, that you've read and all that kind of stuff. But I'm looking at this after 30 years, I don't have a hero. I don't have one. The people that have shaped me have been the other leaders that I've worked side by side with, or people that I've worked for in the heat of the battle. The one person, GE was a unique experience. I got some great leadership skills, but I also found out that I wasn't part of the GE culture. That just isn't who I was. But 2 years after that, I got the opportunity to become the vice president of sales and eventually global marketing for a company called LXIS Healthcare in the neurocare division. And this was a turnaround. I mean, they were the market leader for 20 years, and people bought and sold them about 3 times and never put a single dime into product development. They just bled the brand. So this was a turnaround effort. All the leadership team except 2 people were from the outside. And when they bring you in from the outside, it's not because things are great. Right. So I'll just call her Lori. I won't give you her last name, but she had been GE. She had been a lot of other things. She's probably the smartest person I've ever met. And she motivated people to do tasks. She didn't tell you what to do. She would tell you how to do it if you ask, but she empowered you to learn and grow in everything you did. And I was part of a senior leadership team. We had a VP of sales, VP of marketing, engineering, manufacturing, whatever. And, we literally had to take a group that was down in the dumps. Their products were low. The customers were losing faith, and figure out how in the world we're going to take 5 different sales channels with all hundreds of products and try to update them all at once, which wasn't going to happen. Yeah. In the end, we turned it around, but I probably grew in more time under Lori than every other time in my career, because the difference is she taught me how to go from being a sales leader to being more of a general manager. It just so happens that my skill set is sales. And it was the greatest growth time. And to this day, she's probably the only real mentor I've ever had.
That's interesting. So do you think that people make the mistake of getting so hung up on looking at the Phil Knights or the picture, whoever you want to, Elon Musk, whoever it is, your person, Steve Jobs, whoever, that they kind of miss out on the great lessons that they can see right under their nose with the people that they're working with, every day? I'm sure it's just is dependent upon the person's personality and that kind of thing. But I just think that sometimes you can get those great leadership experiences and lessons right where you are, but sometimes people miss them because they're so concentrating on trying to emulate or to see what the latest and greatest leadership quote guru has said.
There is no reality in the world. We're all dealing with everybody else's perception of that reality. Right. And I think people are different. Yeah. You want to learn from great leaders and great books and everything else, but some people feel like they have to learn by one book to another, one leader to another, whatever. And in some cases, that's not their fault. They've never been given the opportunity to go develop themselves. Yeah. If you look around you, there's some great leaders there. You got probably great leaders working in this building. Right. They're not sales leaders, they're accountants. But they're great leaders everywhere, and you don't have to be famous to be a great leader. You just have to have the desire and the skill set to go do it. And then, unfortunately, not everybody gets that opportunity. Yeah, true. So speaking of development and that kind of thing, I'm a big believer that self-awareness is a key to being able to be an effective leader. I don't care what you're doing. But so with that being said, you've had a lot of experiences, but are there any areas that you're still trying to improve upon? I'm sure that you would tell me that you're always trying to improve, and that's great. But any specific area that over another one that you're like, I could probably. Well, first off, you did answer the question I was going to give you, because everybody's trying to improve. But the interesting,
I was taking the easy one away from you.
Yeah, I know. The interesting thing is that we all have things that we're really good at and things that we need to grow in. I'm at an interesting part in my career in the fact that where I need to grow is not necessarily what's important anymore. It's where the people that are hiring me and I'm working with, where they need to grow. How can I help them grow in the areas they need to be successful in their business? I'm far from perfect, not even close. When God created me, He left out a lot of cogs. But the point is that at some point in time, you hit a wall, and it's kind of like if I had to improve something, it might be a little less sarcasm and more honesty. But, instead of getting mad at people, I usually get sarcastic and they kind of get the message. If I get mad, then there's consequences usually. And sometimes that's my fault, not theirs. So another thing Lori used to tell us as leaders is that, you are a signal emitting device to the rest of the organization. So be sure you're sending the right message. Well, I used to listen to that, and then all of a sudden we missed a number really badly one quarter, and I sent out a message that was pretty scathing, and she sent me, Nick, remember, you're a signal-emitting device. And I said, yep, and I emitted the exact signal I wanted. But as far as improvement goes, I'm really focused on clients now. It's not like I'm trying to do rocket science. I'm not trying to redevelop anything. I'm not dealing with multi-million-dollar companies. I've had that kind of responsibility, but I'm dealing with people that are trying to build a business, try to build something, and my focus now isn't my career. My career is kind of weaning at this point, and I'm just having fun helping people. Yeah, so that's what my focus is, and that's a roundabout way of going back to the same answer. I always want to improve.
Yeah. No, that's great. I'm going to change gears just a little bit, but before we started recording, you and I were kind of talking about football, and you were giving me some background about your kids. They're all over the country. You got one in Oregon and one in Wisconsin and
one in North Carolina, right. And then one here in Mobile.
Okay, so you have all the football conferences covered, right? So
yeah, I do.
I'm a big college football fan, and I've asked this question before, and it's just interesting to me because I think the talent parity across especially the Power 5 conferences I think it's just greater today as far as equal talent than it's ever been, right?
Except Alabama.
And they always do seem to have more 5-star, recruits than anybody else. But my question is this. I mean, when you look at the talent at these colleges and universities, the talent being equal, some schools are more successful than others and really kind of on a continuous basis. What do you attribute that to? It's obviously got something to do with the leadership and the coaching. That's what I'm getting at. So what makes outside the talent, what makes an Alabama or a Clemson the perennial powerhouse and winner, and another school that may have just as much talent, they just can't seem to get it going?
You just defined our football season, but I won't go there.
Well, right, and look, I'm an Auburn fan. It's tough being an Auburn fan. I've been one for years. The heartbreak is real, and it's regular. So,
well, let's get off Auburn in a minute because we could go a long time between the two of us. But to answer your question, not to be like a cliche, but it does start with leadership. When Nick Saban came, I was not a Saban fan because he hated Auburn. Mm-hmm. But you cannot argue with his ability. He establishes he's king. He's got good leaders around him, and people want to play for him. So if people want to follow you, that's the first sign of a great leader. Secondly, he establishes the accountability that we talk to, accountability to the team no matter what. I mean, you got 5-star players that are willing to sit for 2 years and never touch the football because they want to play for Nick Saban. Oh, they also want to get drafted. Yeah. So it really comes down to what are the expectations set by the leader. In this particular case, it's the coach. Some coaches, they've got certain skill sets, like somebody we were talking about earlier, but they may not have that true leadership quality to be a head coach. Mm-hmm. And it's just like that in business. I mean, there are people out there that have got great skills, but you don't want to make them your CEO because they don't have the desire or they don't really have the skill set to lead. They're great at what they do.
Yeah.
So go do what you're great at.
Yeah. Fair enough. It's just always... That's just always intrigued me, and part of it is because I do live in the state of Alabama, and so, you get Alabama football and Nick Saban pushed down your throat every week, it seems like, but deservedly so.
Well, I mean, there's some great coaches out there that I think can be great leaders. The problem is they don't have the right people skills, like Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I'm a Kiffin fan. I don't care what all the hurry up, run and gun guys think they're gurus at. The best offensive mind possibly in football is Lane Kiffin. Mm-hmm. Now, he's a goofball off the field sometimes, but I like him. I was always a Spurrier fan too.
Yeah.
So
no, agreed. All right, one more thing before we kind of get into a couple of get-to-know Nick questions. So I've asked a couple of questions about COVID the last several months because COVID's still a thing. I'm going to kind of combine the two questions into one for you. What is something good in your life that's come out of COVID? I'm a firm believer in you kind of play the hand you're dealt, right? And it is what it is. And so we're all dealing with COVID. It's a terrible virus. It's not a good thing. But I think people can make the best out of a bad situation. So what's something good that's come out of COVID for you?
You're kind of asking the wrong person, because I hate to say this, but COVID didn't change our life that much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm pseudo-retired. I don't have young kids at home. I don't have to deal with homeschooling or whatever. I would be considered a high-risk group, but I'm healthy.
Yeah.
So my wife's a nurse, but she doesn't see patients actively. Mm-hmm. So our life hadn't changed a lot, but it has changed for our kids. Yeah. I've learned the best thing that's come out of this for me is I learned how to use more technology.
Well,
that's the positive thing, and you just pray for everybody else.
Yeah. Look, I mean, if that's it, that's great. But I think that kind of where people go off the rails a little bit is where they refuse to, and I know some people who refuse to find anything good in the situation. Is it a terrible situation? Absolutely. Is it disruptive and awful, and has it cost lives and money and jobs? Yes, but you still got to look for the good in the situation, right? And
so, I mean, look outside. It's a beautiful day.
Right.
I mean, that's the only way you can take it, because you can't change it. We're eventually going to get a vaccine by somebody, I guess. And, we just have to learn to deal with COVID just like we've learned to deal with traffic. Yeah. It's life now, and COVID's not going to disappear. It will eventually, in my mind. I spent 30 years in medical devices, but I have no medical degree. But in my mind, it's going to be a regular occurrence like the flu. I'm not saying it is the flu, so nobody sends you hate mail.
Thank you.
But the point is we're going to have to deal with it just like we've dealt with other things. Maybe we get rid of it like we did polio when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. But we're just going to have to deal with it. So play the hand that's dealt with us. We got a beautiful day. We're healthy. Pray for those that are struggling, and just do what you got to do to live.
Agreed. So what do you do for fun when you're not leading and teaching sales folks how to lead and sell? What do you do?
Well, I've got 2 big motorcycles. My wife and I like to ride.
Okay.
And we also ride bikes, do some other things. We used to do ballroom dancing, not because we wanted to compete, just because we wanted to be able to have fun.
Right.
We're eating up with grandkids. We got 7 grandkids in 4 different states, and when we're traveling to see kids. So, and then we're enjoying Fairhope. We moved across the bay.
Okay.
So we can get up and jump on a motorcycle, and 50 minutes later, our feet are in the sand, and you can go to the beach, or that's a fun place to live. So, and again, we're trying to figure out how we're going to eventually retire. Right. I'm not ready to retire, neither is she. We're both 65, but hey, I don't feel 65. Mm-hmm. I look at the old guy in the mirror. He's 65, but I don't feel 65. So
what's the best ride you guys have taken? What's the most scenic, maybe?
Oh, we've done several. When we lived in Georgia, the Georgia mountains are gorgeous, and it's the tail end of the what they call the tail of the dragon, which comes through the Carolinas down through Virginia, and it has more twisty turns than any place in the country, and it's a cliff on one side, so basically the views are great. Yeah. And that's probably the most scenic ride. The funnest ride is we spent 3 days when I got transferred to Madison for LXIS. We rode the motorcycle from Birmingham up there, and they just made it a 3-day trip and went through 8 different states, following the Mississippi River all the way, staying in bed and breakfast. One of my managers worked for me. He also rode a motorcycle, so he rode down from St. Louis and met us and traveled with him the rest of the way. We had a sales manager meeting, and I allowed him to come on his Harley and blue jeans. But, it's that's been one of the more scenic rides. I don't like riding on the highway. I mean, I can do it. I got a 1800 Gold Wing that can handle it. Mm-hmm. It's just boring, and when you can reach out and touch a truck tire, that's not any fun. No, whereas the scenic back roads, you're not flying, it's not dangerous. My motorcycle is screaming yellow, so nobody's going to miss me. But we spend a lot of time. I'm fortunate that my wife really likes to ride, so it's something we do together.
That's good. That's great. So 7 grandchildren, ages.
Let's see. Ollie is 18 months in Portland, and then our oldest are 2 identical twin girls in Charlotte, North Carolina. They're 10.
Okay. So if you could give one piece of advice that all the grandbabies would hear as far as their development into young adults and then on into adulthood, what would your advice be to them right now as they continue to grow and as they at some point make that transition into adulthood?
I'd give them the same advice I'd give parents. Enjoy the day. You don't get the day back. In every stage of your life, every stage of a parent's life, every stage of a parent's life in their kid's life, it's one time. You get one shot at it, and so many times, whether you're a teenager that's trying to, God, I can't wait till I get my driver's license, or, you're in grade school and you can't wait until you can go do something else, or you get an iPod or whatever, or Christmas comes, or parents that says, God, I cannot wait till my kids can walk, or I can't wait till, you're just missing the moment. Yeah. I mean, God gave us a certain amount of moments. We don't know how many we got. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm not trying to get overly religious on here. It's just faith. But, you've got a certain amount of moments, a certain amount of breaths, and you ought to just enjoy every single one of them. And tomorrow you can worry about that one.
Yeah, Nick, that's great. Thank you so much for your insight. It's been a great interview. We'll link your social media and website in the show notes. If people want to learn more about LXIS Management Solutions, they can go to LXIS-ms.com. Nick Nichols, been great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. It definitely helps us in the ratings, and it also makes it easier for other folks to find the podcast. And as always, a big thank you to producer and editor Carrie Wolf. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Aviso Group. If you want to know more about who we are and what we do, you can visit our website at avisogroup.com. That's AVIZO group.com. You can also check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.